Hello, I am Jamie, aka Brandoff, the off-brand Gandalf, and today I'm going to give you the story I was going to tell you from the Fist Ultra Edition playtest. I got a comment asking if there would be any video from the playtest. The answer is no. This is a play-by-post game hosted on the official Fist Discord. But that means that everything we did is gloriously etched in text form for posterity. This was my first play-by-post game in years, and I have to admit I was not really super excited about the format. I just haven't played much play-by-post before, and so for me, like, the draw was getting to play an RPG run by the creator, in this case, the wonderful CLAYMORE, and just getting to try out the new Fist Ultra. So like I wasn't like super sold on the format, but here's my character arc. I began the game as someone who would maybe not be too enthused about play-by-post. Midway through, I was 100% sold. I think like the nice thing about it is you get to really think out your responses. You know, in the heat of the moment, you can maybe come up with a witticism. But if you're the type who thinks up of the perfect comeback an hour later when you're driving home in your car, play-by-post is pretty cool because you can take an hour to come up with your response if you want. I think we need to introduce the playtesters, introduce the team via like Guy Ritchie, like zoom in on their picture and slap the text on the screen with like some really like funky music. Unfortunately, that would require me to get character art, zoom in on it, and buy some funky music. So I'm not going to do any of that. Instead, I'm going to display everyone's character cards using Fist Operative Profile. These were created by the Lone Archivist. You can find them on itch.io in the link below. I think they're really nice. They're designed for fitting a whole character on an index card, but they're also like perfect shape and size to just splash on the screen here. All right, meet your mercenaries. First, we have codename Cheshire. Cheshire's role is an icon. They want to blow up and have no one remember me. Just the explosion. Cheshire's traits are interrogation. You can lock an unsuspecting enemy in a chokehold and ask them one question, which they always have to answer truthfully before trying to escape. And reload. When you're about to attack with a ranged weapon, you can choose to dig your heels, slam another mag, and unload a whole clip. You will deal double damage, but any damage you take until finding cover will also be doubled. Cheshire agreed. Now, a quick note about Cheshire. Cheshire is like an anthropomorphic cat, but like none of our characters could see that. Cheshire had some kind of like a displacement field around them. Cheshire is forceful and reflexive. One of the interesting things about here, I'm already getting off topic, but I will just say an interesting thing about the ability scores in Fist is that they're sort of interpretive, meaning it's not as simple that forceful is for big, powerful melee weapons and reflexive is for shooting. It's not like dexterity and strength. It's more like fate accelerated, where it's like the method that you're using. At one point in the game, someone could carefully take aim with their rifle. At another point in the game, they could jump around the corner and just like blindly fire and hope they hit. And those would be two different scores. You know, are you kicking down the door and just shooting anything that moves, or are you carefully taking your shot? Even though at both times you're using the same rifle, it's a different score, which I think is really cool. And as a player, you never quite know which one you're going to go for. As a player, I have learned, you must choose your words carefully. Up next, we have codename Crab. Crab is a scholar dedicated to forging true Damascus steel. Crab is forceful and creative. Crab's traits are champion. You live for the thrill of battle. When you are the only player to survive a fight, immediately gain 2d6 max HP and fully heal. You also start with a kind of a special, I would say, magical spear. And Seer. When you have a moment of peace and quiet, you may read your divination tool, perhaps a deck of playing cards or a set of polyhedral dice, and roll creative. If you succeed, the referee will answer one question about the current mission honestly. So Crab is a cool character. They're all about Molybdomancy is how you say it for sure, which is like divination through metals, which is very cool. Crab has a neat moment coming up. Then there's Barry. Her traits are Noir and Highlander. Noir, as a Noir, you are a detective from the old days. When crime ran the streets, the cigarettes were plentiful, and hard work meant something. You gain +1 on rolls you provide an appropriate monologue for. That's one of my favorite traits in the game. Monologue-powered bonuses. Highlander, when you kill someone important, you may gain a trait, but not the associated stat bonus or item based on any special abilities they may have. The referee decides who is important. This is kind of neat because you get to like take abilities from your opponents. I don't actually have Barry's character sheet, which I think is fitting because Barry has always been a bit of a mystery to me this whole game. I know she's tanky and tough. I don't think I ever saw her character sheet. And to be honest, I didn't realize she was a detective. I normally try not to step on anyone's toes character concept wise. Like I try to come up with something different. And last, and some would say least, we have Holland, my character. Holland was also sort of a detective. His role was repentant. His traits are amateur, which is you have no formalized military training. Civilians always listen to you, but you can never pass for a soldier. And lush. You prefer to fight at least half in the bag. When you have some free time, you can take a few shots and take +2 to your next forceful roll. As playtesters, we all got to start with a special weapon tag. For Holland, I picked up the lucky tag to a pistol. And my concept was that unknown even to him, he has a secret weapon, a lucky revolver that's kept him alive. Holland was my attempt at making a character who was fated to die. That's not to say I ever tried to put him in any jeopardy. Quite the opposite. I tried to protect old Holland, but I had a feeling he wouldn't make it to the end of the mission. People get really creative with their fist characters, which I like. For such a rules-like game, they take their 2 traits and they come up with great stories. And so yeah, here's Holland's. Holland is in over his head, like standing on tiptoes to breathe over. He's a private investigator and not a good one. He took on some of the most dangerous cases in LA, but somehow he survived, like a drunk driver survives an auto wreck. Holland's not proud of that, but he uses it, his reputation for not being killed. He's got a kid, kids grow up, kids go to college. Holland wants to make it a good one. He owes her that much. So he took ever more deadly cases, and despite his best efforts, somehow survived them. Word got out. Holland moved up in the world, failed forward, if you will, and now he's here in this trunk in over his head. Miniatures in one pocket and a fat life insurance policy in the other. If you die on the job, it pays triple. Holland is a 100% unique creation that I certainly didn't base on, say, a character from one of my all-time favorite movies. Definitely not. Claymore began to narrate the beginning. It's December 1970, and you're on the interstate highway leading into Dallas, Texas. 2 of you are in the back, and 1 is in the trunk. So that leaves Crab's character as the driver. It's still a good ways to Dallas, so there's time to formulate a game plan. Rob Peterson, the team's informant, is a computer science professor at UT Dallas. He lives downtown. He has a very nice new computer he wants to show you. The 4-story boarded up office building you'll be investigating is also downtown. The businesses which rent space here, or which did rent space before being presumably subsumed into the overseer's sphere of control, include 2 law firms and an investment banking firm. You can go directly to this building, potentially butting up against the police, and Barry took the lead and said she thinks that we should go to Peterson's place first. This was the point that I realized that I was stuffed in a trunk and unable to actually contribute to the game. One of my ideas for Holland going in was that he was he's suffering from a past trauma and he's unable to ride in a car without being overwhelmed by vertigo. I didn't realize just how much driving we were going to be doing on this mission. I quickly became a little concerned that I was being disruptive. Almost immediately, everyone's like, what do we do? And it's like, well, I don't know. One of us are in the trunk. So we get to town, and what followed was like a super comfortable dialogue scene. So we head up to Rob's building, and Crab knocks on the door, and we hear this muffled voice with a southern drawl going, yeah, hold on, I'm coming. 8 locks unlock on the other side of the door. He opens it up, and we see a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a shaggy mustache, wearing jeans, sandals, and a Grateful Dead tee. I realized that like I was still in the trunk at this point. I should say that we were all kind of getting into the groove, and this was my first time with this kind of asynchronous game, so like there was a little bit of retconning temporally speaking. So I kind of like had my big introduction. Holland spills out of the trunk, sandy hair a mess, dark sunglasses, fumbling with an unlit cigarette poking out from below his mustache. He pats his powder blue suit in a fruitless search for matches before following the team upstairs, sheepishly muttering, good morning, regardless of the actual time. So Rob, and he kind of invites us into this like studio apartment with wood paneled walls. There's a kitchen. It's filled with like computer equipment, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you know, you've got the conspiracy board on the wall. It's like your perfect contacts room. And Rob starts to fill us in on what's going on. There are weird mind control experiments in the area. He offers us some coffee. And Barry rolls over. She's kind of an obscene amount of sugar and cream gal. Rob kind of like eyeballs Crab's spear, because Crab's got this like very, they've made like this like Damascus spear used for their psychic rituals. And it becomes kind of like an ongoing joke throughout the campaign. Like, how are we going to hide this thing? Like any kind of shenanigans, any kind of sneaking we do, we're going to have to come up with a way to hide the spear. Claymore does like some really good characterization in this. Here's one of my favorite. I'm trying not to like highlight every single moment of this, but here's one of my favorite moments. Rob goes, very cool, groovy, he says, and his eyes widen. He pronounces the word like he heard a few cool students say it once and really took the idea to heart. I love that. It's such a good bit of characterization. So Rob tells us that there's an overseer program that's been going since the late 50s. And he's like, people used to tell him that he was crazy for following this. Cheshire, who has kind of remained mostly quiet. And I really liked how Cheshire would kind of like include inner monologue and spoiler tags so we could peer in on that. Crab decides to try and recruit Rob. Before he even tries, like Claymore kind of points out that like, there's going to have to be some way of convincing him. You know, Rob is a careful guy. So Crab tries to argue that we need him to come with us because he knows more about the building and all the mind control than any of us do. Crab rolls and gets a 4, which is a failure. And Rob, you know, his eyes widen and he's like, yeah, I know too much. We're looking out the window here. Bet you anything they're out there looking in. And he stands up and he's like, God damn, you guys got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. And so we're about to get kicked out. I wasn't really sure how to handle this because like, I don't want to try and negate the failure of another teammate. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, that failure never happened. But I felt like the situation had changed and like we had like seconds to respond. So Holland actually tries to do something at long last. This is a perfect example of why the play-by-post format is cool, because I never could have come up with this on the spot. Holland holds up his hands in a placating gesture. All right, Rob, no worries. We'll be out of your hair in a second. But you got to understand, we're going in blind. We don't know what's going on in there. They could be experimenting, improving the system. Next thing you know, it's not just the office building, it's the whole block, the whole neighborhood. Schools of little kiddies, all. He bugs his eyes out and starts shuffling around like a sleepwalker. We're going to put a stop to that, I promise. But before we do, we need to know anything you can tell us about how to avoid winding up hypnotized. I've seen pod people, and that's not the life for me. And that's not the life for you, Rob. And that's not the life for those poor kids. And that's not the life for America. And then Holland straightens his suit jacket and stares heroically off into the middle distance, his gaze slowly sliding towards Rob to see if he's buying any of this. So this actually hurt for me to type out because Jamie, that's not how Pod People works. Pod People is not about folks getting hypnotized. It's about people being replaced by vegetable alien clones, like killed and replaced by it's not about having your mind taken over, but it felt like Holland would not have any idea how Pod People work. So I got a detail about a horror movie wrong. That's what a good role player I am. I can portray someone who doesn't know how Pod People works. And I rolled an 11 out of 12. Rob, he kind of gives us some more tips there. He has a theory that the frequencies could probably be blocked by a Faraday cage. And then he kind of hints that perhaps that some of the police had their minds taken over. Others didn't, that remained in their car or only got out briefly. So I kind of took that as like a hint that maybe if you're in a car, your car kind of works like a Faraday cage, like the glass and steel blocks the overseer's mind control rays. So as we kind of make a plan, Crab suggests like going in the front through some chicanery, some spycraft, and so we're gonna head in with like a cockamamie story. Holland suggests that we might need to wrap up Crab's spear with one of those tubes, art tubes for art, I think they call them. He mouths art tubes a few more times. Ever the badass Barry takes the driving wheel, proceeds to roll through Dallas. Claymore rolls, I think, some kind of like random encounter table, and our path becomes blocked by a recently placed barricade. There's 2 cops standing in the middle of the road in a squad car. Yeah, this is a real map of downtown Dallas from 1960 something. It's one of the fun things about real world historical games. You can just like load up a map. The cops tell us that there are multiple gas leaks downtown and we're going to have to turn around. He tells us to, in fact, skedaddle. Barry plays it cool, hearing you loud and clear. She turns the car around and gestures vaguely to her passengers. We got to find another way out of here. At this point, Claymore, the referee, she says that if we want to make it downtown and avoid the law, we could do a tactical roll. Tactical rolls are interesting. It can be basically like anytime you're trying to avoid danger almost, or think of a better way to do something. Barry gets a 7, which is a mixed success. And unfortunately, Barry has trouble driving for the rest of the scenario. It is no fault of her own. It is the dice gods are cruel. They give some days and they take away others. We wind up in like an industrial district. There's a corpse laying in the middle of the street with no visible injuries. Just someone in a long, tan, dirty trench coat squatting over the body. The figure's face is away from you, and the trench coat whips against their back like there's a strong, bustling wind. As far as you can tell, the air is still. Yeah, so this is definitely something alarming. So at this point, like I wanted to check in with the group and make sure me riding around the trunk wasn't overly disruptive. Claymore asks how I wound up with the fear of riding in a car. And so I go ahead and I share my backstory. 1965, Holland curled up in a bottle and didn't come out till after sundown. When he woke, he realized he was late to pick up his daughter. The kid was fine. Angry, frustrated, but fine. On the way back, he hit a patch of ice and wrapped his car around a tree. Holland walked away without a scratch, but his daughter wasn't so lucky. She broke 12 bones and went to live with her mother. He doesn't blame her, not one bit. He blames himself. And now every time he sets foot in a car, his hands start shaking, and he gets the spins, like he's slow motion twirling across ice. So yeah, he'll take the trunk if that's okay. There's my backstory. So we see the person in a trench coat. It's an older fellow. He's kind of looking over his shoulder at the car and muttering to himself. It looks like the guy in the trench coat is talking to someone, but we don't see who. So they figured that the best person to go forward and talk to this guy is Holland because of my amateur trait. Like I don't look like a paranormal mercenary. I just look like a normal person, but I'm in the trunk. So Claymore has me roll a tactical roll to see if I can hear, and I get a 4 total. And so Claymore says that for the failure, she'll rule that Holland isn't aware of anything going on outside. So the old guy turns around and he shouts something that no one can make out, and his trench coat billows aggressively. And let me tell you, when you're playing a paranormal mercenary game, if anyone's trench coat begins billowing aggressively, you're about to be shot in the face. Crab rolls down the window and is like, hello? The man speaks with a British accent, perfect Queen's English, just like out of an old movie. This is a crimes. God damn it. This is never going to happen. Maybe I'll try for Michael Caine. This is a crime scene. You must leave at once. Barry, who's driving, is like, meaning no disrespect at all, but you don't look like a police officer, sir. Could I perhaps see a badge? The detective quickly flashes something golden, maybe a medal, and then hastily tucks it back inside the trench coat. Ripley rolls an ultra success. And so what happened here is that he basically had like a magical badge. We learned that it is a Cyclops dynamic ID. They're mass produced by captive magicians outfitted with a simple glamour that responds to the user's whims. The dynamic ID shows Major Thomas Cambridge MI6. It's clear it's crow trickery. Crows are kind of like the opposing side. Barry tries to roll reflex to floor it. Barry gets a 2 on the escape. As she tries to peel away, the crow's trench coat explodes in a fit of activity as he lifts slightly off the ground, boot toes brushing over the pavement, and hovers over the car. His hand firmly grasps the bottom of the window frame, and he says, "You don't want to test me, my dear." The trench coat suddenly sprays out like a parachute, dragging the car back to halt a few blocks away. "Now get out! All of you!" And a day-drinking, business-dressed onlooker gawks at the car before vomiting onto the pavement, which is a fun little kind of Superman 2 kind of a detail. "Out!" The crow operative pulls a trench gun, a small trench gun. Cheshire starts to flash back to their life as a soldier, and battle was all they knew. And when in peace, they were kind of like an awkward, half-listening thing, a cat lounging in the sun, laxing, thinking listfully, and waiting for someone to scratch it. And then, this is when Cheshire starts to stand out as a multimedia master who begins to flavor their actions with a playlist. They post a link to the song, I cannot pronounce this, Hideyuki Takahashi's Run Rabbit Junk. Seeing a gun pulled on the teammate, they snap into action. This is what they were made to do almost. Cheshire's hands blur, reaching for a pistol that was sitting snugly in their sling. They pull back on the chamber, reloading it with calm, cold precision, and this activates their reload trait for double damage. It doesn't give any kind of a warning, just kind of opens fire. Cheshire rolls and only gets a 4, unfortunately. So they go for the gun, they squeeze off a shot, but the trench coat suddenly flicks up and deflects it. And he goes, "Aha!" shouts the crow, and quickly swivels to point the trench gun through Cheshire's window. And Claymore tells me that I definitely hear gunshots coming from in the car, even though I'm in the truck. And then Barry unleashes her first monologue. I don't know how to voice Barry, do her justice, but I'll try. "Well, ain't this just sweeter than Grandma's apple pie? Haven't stepped one foot on the scene and already Cyclops has given it to us like it's Christmas. In broad daylight, too. A shotgun scuffle on sun-baked Dallas streets. Ain't the men in black always whining about secrecy? I'm scared. Scared of this English bastard. Scared of somebody seeing all this hubbubaloo and calling in the cops. Scared of the sword at my hip. But I'll be damned if I let his teammate get shanghaied. I toss open my door like it means something, and I try to clock the back of the officer's head. That's a force roll with +1 from the monologue. That's an 11. So Barry goes for an unarmed attack. Unfortunately, in Fist, that's 2d6 drop highest, or basically 2d6 at disadvantage, for a grand total of 1 whole damage. While Barry and this dude start tussling, Cheshire moves in, reloading a knife, don't ask, and they go in for the kill. Cheshire gets a mixed success and gets to roll double damage due to reload trait. And so Cheshire leaps forward in an awkward leaping tackle. The green of their goggles seemed almost for a second to have slit cat eyes seething down at their prey. Gurk is all Major Tom can manage as the knife is driven cleanly through his ribs. No, don't leave me! He begins to like rapidly age. No! And then he dies, and the trench coat like unravels itself and like peels off of him. Murdering this guy kind of puts Cheshire in a bad place. But as they sit there kind of stunned, like the trench coat peels itself off the dead crow agent and kind of hops onto poor Cheshire. Like a bunch of voices start to bubble up in a cacophony of whispers, French and German, and they're talking about Cheshire's a natural-born killer. Cheshire even hears the voice of the man they just killed. One of them is like, it's not human, it's a cat. And then Major Tom says, kitty kitty, you'll be all right now. And Cheshire earns a new trait of trenchcoat. You're bonded with a symbiotic life form with whom you share a tumultuous and intimate relationship. That describes every relationship you have with a trench coat. The constant commentary by a chorus of alien voices makes it difficult to hold onto your thoughts or focus on tasks. Your role is irrelevant. You can only advance by following the whims of the coat. You roll D6, and at 1 to 2, you trust no one, not even for a moment. At 3 to 4, you destroy something important. And at 5 to 6, you backstab a teammate before they backstab you. Cheshire gains a symbiotic trench coat with 5 armor versus attacks from behind and -1 tactical. I typed, Holland hears the gunshot and leaps into action, bashing the top of his head on the trunk. He groans, hey! He rubs his head. Hey, what's going on out there? He reaches for the trunk. You'd better not be killing my work friends. Fun fact for you omniscient readers out there. Untethered from the confines of space and time, the interior trunk latch won't come standard on passenger vehicles for another 40 years. Luckily, Holland has a key. He holds the muzzle of his revolver in the general direction of the trunk's lock, and he fires off a deafening round. Now, earlier I talked about how I like seeing game creators run their own games, and a moment like this is why. Claymore says that she thought about having me roll because it'd be interesting if I shot myself, but A, genre rules say that locks can be shut off, no Mythbuster shit, and B, she thinks I've paid off the failure that left me isolated in the car narratively. So, bang, you shoot the mechanism and the trunk swings slightly open. It's now permanently unlocked. Good luck closing it again with an impact warped latch. Holland rolls up and he sees, Cheshire standing over a body. Hey, Cheshire, you get shot? Nice jacket. Where'd you? And then he kind of looks down at the ground and the unlit cigarette tangles from his open mouth. And he's like, Cheshire, why'd you kill that old guy? Holland runs a hand through his sandy hair. He's like 90. He's like a rough 90. And so keep in mind, Major Tom rapidly aged. And in fact is without the trench coat, you see he's got a World War I uniform on him. And so Holland knocks on the car window and he's like, guys, I think Cheshire did a murder. He looks back and down at the body and he moans, oh man, this guy's a veteran. And he gently guides Cheshire back into the car. Come on, time to get going. And poor Cheshire's in a really bad place mentally right now. Didn't think this through. And that's all Cheshire could say in reply, head hanging low. So even though Cheshire now looks like a cat due to whatever illusion, or I forget which, some kind of illusion kept us from noticing, that's gone now. But I just roleplayed it as Holland's so freaked out that his teammate may have accidentally killed an elderly innocent veteran that he's just not really paying any attention to what's going on. Holland looks down, salutes the old guy, crosses himself, and leaps into the blast-free seat. His eyes squeeze tight, waiting for the wave of vertigo. It's okay, Cheshire. I'm sure everyone kills a member of the greatest generation from time to time. It was bound to happen in our business. Nothing you could do. Hey, Barry, could we please drive to where we're going? Please? And then I clarified that in a normal situation, if Holland saw Cheshire standing over a body, he would compliment them on the shot. He doesn't know anything about like magic trench coats that you age 100 years when they come off. So we're all in the car, and then Crab busts out the Molybdomancy, which is melting metal, usually lead, over a little flame and dropping it into water. And then you read the metal to see the future, which is freaking awesome. So we pile into the car, and Crab has like their big moment. They slip into their own little world in the passenger seat, and they take a moment to commune with the arcane. And fire licks lead. Lead drops into your divination dish, and an oblong pointy shape appears, not unlike the silhouette of a crow. The slightest disturbance in the water causes the shape to crack into 4 roughly even pieces. A bad omen. Any idea what it could mean? And Crab surmises that, it's probably 4 crow agents are about to kill us, So Barry drives off. Crab's up front doing metal divinations. In the back are Holland and Cheshire. Holland kind of hands Cheshire a cigarette and asks first time. And Cheshire's quiet for a while. And thoughts bubble from the dark. And they say, I wish. And then all of a sudden the coat begins speaking to Cheshire, saying, I wouldn't worry too much. The man has seen a few wars, done horrible things, and worked for horrible people. Perhaps you did the world a favor. And then another voice says, or maybe Cheshire here just killed a guy. Barry's player is like, so can we just like go get like a roadmap, which is a fine idea. Holland like kind of scrambles out of the car because he does not like being in cars, and he's just like, don't worry, Barry, I'll got you back on this one. And Barry's like, all right, I think I can get a map for myself, but thanks, Pally. Nice and clean. And the clerk is like, you all hear about them gunshots? The clerk thinks it was maybe dealers or something were fighting. And Holland, this is Holland's big moment to like not appear to be like a cool mercenary. He's just like just passing as a dude. Holland shakes his head, feigning disgust. Addicts, right? Those guys, they got no self-control. World's going to hell in a handbasket. Hey, I'll take a pack of Winston Lights. And I quickly assembled a small mountain of snacks for the team. I got beef jerky, cheese crackers, and little bottles of Coke. I roll to see how many snacks I can afford. And it's not as many as I thought. So I start to pay. And then I realize I only have so much money. And Holland sheepishly restocks the mountain of snacks onto the shelves. And he's like, my eyes were bigger than my wallet. And so we head on back out. And then things start to get a little bad. That was, you know what? We'll look back at that trip to Texaco. That was like a golden age. You never realize you're in a golden age until it's over. Buying snacks in that nice Texaco. Them's were the salad days. Because something small and airborne flies towards our vehicle. Barry tries to swerve, gets a mixed success. Thunk. Something metal and pointy rips through the car's ceiling and stabs down into everyone's field of view. Someone has landed atop the car. I think not, interlopers. How about you? Booms a theatrical voice through the newly created hole in the roof. Cheshire's like, what? Again, like being in cars makes Holland jumpy even on a good day, even when he's not being stabbed through the roof. So he yells, plug your ears, and he pulls out his revolver and booms right back, making a few holes in the roof of his own. And he's just like randomly firing into the roof. He gets a mixed success. Whoever was up on our roof gets hit for 1 damage, and they're grazed. There's a police barricade nearby, so we've almost certainly alerted the police. And we see that there's whoever was up on our roof is an odd-looking guy, and his fashion choices are a little antiquated. Clownish face with bloodshot eyes and a goatee. And he's holding a long, pointed steel rod. It turns out all these crow agents we're going to be fighting are from a flock of crows, which is an add-on for Fist. I will include in the link because they're really cool. So it turns out that Krebs' molybdomatic reading was spot on. We're up against a 4 CRO team who've been dispatched to Dallas as well. And 2 more people scamper and crawl into view, one from a hidden alley, another from a nondescript window from the alley. There's a tall, ephemeral, beak-nosed older gentleman with a short, thick gray hair, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, old-fashioned and haughty, and carries a fencing rapier with a certain elegant grace and a posh London accent. And then there's an even older guy, tan leather, who has to be in his mid-80s, wearing a white shirt and khaki pants, a white snakeskin belt, supporting himself on a mahogany cane, smoking filterless cigarettes that's burned down to his teeth. And he's got a double-barrel big game hunting rifle. And he commands us to get out with our hands up. Cheshire's like, Cyclops has some odd taste in personnel. And refers to themselves as a talking tactical cat. So the CRO agents begin talking about like what to do with us. And one of them mentions that the best thing to do would be to capture us, torture us for information, and then execute us. And he's like counting the steps off in his fingers. And Holland is like, did they say torture? And then he yells to the window, hey, I can just tell you stuff. I'm remarkably compliant. And Holland like pulls his white pocket square from his jacket and he waves it like a flag in his free hand. And he's aiming his lucky revolver through the car door. And he's like he grins wide and says through clenched teeth, I hope one of you have a plan. So Claymore offers me kind of a devil's bargain. I can either get a cheap shot at one of the agents right now, or I can actually convince them that I'm surrendering, but I'll have to like put the gun away. And I go ahead and I take the bargain and like I kind of like pop the gun back in my holster. And so like Barry had like kind of like initiated this attempt at surrender, and I was just following the footsteps, following the plan, basically. Yeah, so Barry and Holland, we got our hands up. Crab puts their hands up too, and they're kind of like wondering if anyone suspects anything about like, because like right now the Damascus spear is in like an art tube. And Claymore is like, yeah, I think they'd probably assume that an art tube is some kind of a weapon concealing thingy. The old art tube trick, which I liked. A CRO agent named Hightower guards the back of the car. He's got the rapier. Sky King with a jetpack. He throws open the car door and grabs Barry by the arm. And then Ripley gets off another monologue. And she says, my heart sinks to the center of the earth and pops out in China as he reaches for the scabbard. Every step I take in this tango just seems to bring me closer to drawing it. I've tried, haven't I? I've tried to keep things civil, and now a man's dead. Soon, if something ain't done, everybody I was listening to the radio with on the way to Dallas is gonna be dead too. Deader than a deer that wandered into a NASCAR track. Think! And she grabs Sky King's arm and says, don't effing touch that. It's a forceful roll with a monologue bonus. So Barry winds up just socking this dude in the face. So Barry gets in a tussle with Sky King, who has a jetpack, and like they both go flying off into the air. And Claymore offers kind of like another bargain to Crab, where like Crab realizes that if he can recover this jetpack intact and reverse engineer the chemical fuel, they'll be a step closer to manufacturing Damascus steel. I think Claymore says, no one's told me Holland to get out yet, but the car is getting kind of hot due to the jetpack, right? Because like the ceiling's heating up. Okay, so this is when things get kind of interesting. Holland has had enough of this car for a lifetime. That's what you call foreshadowing. After burning his hand on a red-hot doorknob, he kicks out the side window and wriggles out, landing on the ground with a tactical thud. He keeps an eye on Hightower, waiting for a moment of supreme distraction to draw, all while yelling words of encouragement. You got this, Barry! Show that 2-bit Lancelot who's boss! Now, fun bit of trivia. When I wrote this like right before I went to bed, I believe, and I had a little bit of a weird feeling when I wrote Tactical Thud, because it was just meant for flavor, and I almost didn't write it. Cut to Claymore saying, you said tactical, so you're analyzing the situation for an opening. I think this is a tactical role, if that seems fair to you. It did seem fair. And that's when I roll 2 1s. And then Cheshire's like, wait, doesn't Fist Ultra make it so Snake Eyes are even scarier than just a fail? And Barry's like, dude. And then Cheshire plays one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Now, Claymore says that sudden death is an optional rule, and she hadn't specifically chosen whether or not to use it. Do we want sudden death? And I kind of like, based on that video alone, I said yes. Claymore says that Holland tries to draw his pistol, and Hightower is already on top of it. With a flourish of fencing foil, he lifts the revolver out of Holland's grasp and tosses it onto the pavement, rendering Holland's attack useless. He shifts his stance and suddenly stabs at Holland's chest. All damage is doubled. Claymore rolls a 6. That's 12 damage. Claymore screams. Everyone's like, oh no! And Holland glances up at Hightower with blood seeping through his teeth and says, thanks. I needed. And that's it for Holland. Holland is no more. Even Hightower seems a bit apologetic, having killed him. After that, the battle rages on. There are explosions. There are new people added to the game. Who will Holland's replacement be? Stay tuned and find out. This is only part of the story. Thus ends the tale of Holland. But it is a happy tale. Like I said, he's got that insurance policy in his pocket. His family will be taken care of. I think he went out on his own terms, and he got to buy snacks for everyone. I hope this was somewhat entertaining for you to listen to. I'm by no means some great storyteller, but this has been a very fun playtest, a very fun game to be a part of, and now I can, maybe years from now, I'll like pop this video on and like have a little trip down memory lane. If you would like to play some Fist Ultra, you can find it in the links below. If you like this weird video, go ahead and like and subscribe. And yeah, I have more videos about Fist on the way. I've got more random table adventure design videos coming up. And I also have like a pretty big announcement about a game I'm working on. Yeah, so stay tuned. Until next time, I am Jamie, aka Brandoff, the off-brand Gandalf. And I can never think of anything to say after that last bit.